remember when I lost my mind. There was something so pleasant about that place. Even your emotions have an echo in so much space. And when you're out there without care, yeah, I was out of touch. But it wasn't because I didn't know enough. I just knew too much. Does that make me crazy?
Hello YouTube world, this is Sean, and here goes my video dealing with the second part to Ravi Zacharias' video that was posted on YouTube. The first point he makes in this second video is that it's logically indefensible. Any assumption on moral and ethical issues can only be done if you have some kind of moral point of reference. And I guess his moral point of reference to him would be God in the Bible. And it's interesting because I don't see how that's so. You telling me, if you put a group of people on an island, they've never been exposed to religion, never been exposed to anything regarding God or the laws of the land, are you telling me that eventually this group, through trial and error, would not eventually get it regarding what's good and what's bad? That as they begin to see that, for instance, let's say stealing. If I steal from somebody else in this group, you know what? It brings about a short-term pleasure, but the long-term consequence is terrible because this individual wants to then come back after me in revenge, which then threatens my long-term goal of survival. These long-term consequences far outweigh the short-term benefit of me stealing some of his goods for my survival needs. After enough of that and witnessing this, or being the one that's the victim and realizing, wow, this event actually hurts me. My long-term desire to survive is being affected by this other individual doing what they're doing. So why would I want to turn around and do it to someone else? You see, I haven't been a victim now. I understand what I want to do to this person and his violence. I want to threaten his long-term ability to survive. So that means if I turn around and do this, it's the same thing that's going to be met back to me. So eventually you begin to put that all together after who knows how long it will take. Are you telling me that this group would not eventually figure out and then set as law amongst themselves, naturally, that stealing is a no-go? You telling me that there's scriptures and a God needed, that they got to have some kind of God that they're serving and being commanded by in order to come to these conclusions? You can make up any other example. Anyhow, the next point that was made, it's not like you can step out in front of a truck and then begin to question whether or not it exists. As if this is a good analogy to the situation between atheists and believers, which is not. This is a very terrible analogy because the idiot that decides to step out in front of a truck and then begin to question whether or not it exists has clearly seen, has heard, maybe even smelled and caught the scent of this truck approaching. So if he was then to question at that point whether or not this truck exists, that would be considered very idiotic. And then, of course, he'll be met with the consequences of stepping out in front of it. But let's look at the real analogy of this situation we find ourselves as atheists in. You see, there's the situation where we're about to cross the highway. Now, you have somebody that's a believer who comes to make this claim that there's a truck on this way, and that it's not a good idea to step out there on the highway because you're going to get hit by this truck, and the consequences ain't going to be good. Well, you see, if you look down the road and you see that there's no truck coming, you have to begin to wonder about this person's claims. Even if this person's claims were written in a book, the book said, hey, this truck is going to be on the highway at this time. You don't want to cross this highway because this truck is going to hit you. This person had all kind of mighty internal emotions and attachment to this idea that the truck is coming. We can't step across this highway because the truck will hit us. If you look down that road and you don't see the truck, you don't hear the truck, none of the five senses at all are picking up a truck coming. Wouldn't you begin to question this person's claims? And then eventually decide, you know what, after analyzing the situation and weighing it, I'm going to go ahead and walk across the road because it makes no sense for me to be over here. There's nothing for which I'm going to observe that this truck is coming. There's no way for me to, in a totality, prove or disprove this person's claims. But I'm not going to sit here and hold myself up because he claims that the truck is coming. It's on him to prove that the truck is coming and will hit me. But if it's outside the realm of what we can use to observe, examine, test, and analyze, why even bother with this person's claims? That's the analogy of what's going on here. There's this idea that, oh, well, God exists because it's claimed so and written in a book that claims so, but there's no way inside this realm to test such. Anyhow, I'll move on. The next point that's made is that a man and a woman can't be good without God. And I don't know how that works, because that's the use of circular reasoning. See, your stance, your point is that a man and a woman can't be good without God. But then to prove that, you don't use nothing that's observable, nothing that's been examined or analyzed or tested. You go back in a circle to your Bible to prove that point and say, see, right here in the Bible it says you can't be good without God. No, you can't use that kind of argument. That's circular reasoning, circular logic. It doesn't work. And it's funny that this logic is even used, because if you really observe Christians and religious people in general on a day-to-day basis, you begin to realize that they really don't act too different than an unbeliever to begin with. So when you begin to stack these morals, you begin to see that, wow, there's some that are good and there's some that are bad. There's some unbelievers that are good and there's some unbelievers that are bad, based on the standards of what we can test as far as morality. I mean, this guy points out that Stalin and that somehow through his calling he turned around and wound up killing thousands of people as a proof of logical conclusion. Get out of here. You can't sit there and use one man's example as the idea for everybody, because you haven't observed everybody. But in doing a day-to-day observation, we see that in this current life at the time, that believers don't live really too different from unbelievers, except in these rituals and these other various things, and faith that supposedly then magically makes them righteous. So that's all they have, this faith that supposedly makes them righteous, and these different acts and rituals, but not necessarily moral behavior. But anyhow, we move on. Now there's another point that's made. This guy says, only if God says it's good can it be good, particular moral behaviors. And you know what? The terrible thing is that, do Christians realize that in the Tanakh, the Old Testament, that the very God they serve was the same God that said that, you know what, if you go out there and you rape somebody and they just so happen to be a virgin, that it's okay. All you have to do is go make a payment to the family now and marry them forever. What kind of sick ass rule is that? Even today's standards would condemn that. There is no one, Christian or unbeliever or a religious person alike, that would sit there and agree with such an insane law. Maybe some barbaric individuals, but there's no way normal people would. But yet, according to this person, hey, whatever God calls good is good. I know all kind of excuses would be made out there today for why we shouldn't look at a law like that and then say that something's wrong with God, but you can't really escape it. The idea of stoning people to death is good. The idea of stoning children, good. The idea of having a she-bear come out and mangle children that made fun of a prophet for being bald is good. This is moral. This is moral excellence and righteousness being shown from God, demonstrated by God. Oh boy, that's scary. I mean, I probably can go on and on into that, and maybe I will in a different video. But that's supposedly good, so we should follow that. Wait a minute though. Humanity today would even condemn that. So don't we have a problem here? God called it good, but we humans would call it terrible and evil. I don't know. I take it this person and maybe many individuals have not studied the 600 plus commandments in the Tanakh, have not read the various stories of things that took place there and how God acted. Because clearly, some of the things that took place there were far from righteous, even by human standards. How do you answer that? Folks, this is Sean. And YouTube world, I say to you, have it easy.